So you've decided to buy a property in Spain. It's highly likely it'll be somewhere on or near Spain's Mediterranean coastlines, because that's where 73% of foreigners buy. So what's on your wish list? One item that appears on many of our clients' wish lists, often right at the top, is a sea view, and not just any old sea view. They want panoramic and unobstructed. I always ask if that's non-negotiable. Will they only buy if there's a sea view? Are you one of these buyers? Over the years, I've found many say yes, it's non-negotiable, and then, during the search, other issues take over and push the sea view down the list of priorities, even to the extent it disappears from the criteria altogether. So what are some of the things to consider when hunting down a sea view? First of all, how flat is the coast where you're looking? The reality is that most of Spain's Mediterranean coastline is flat, meaning the 180-degree panoramic and unobstructed sea views are restricted to frontline beach positions. If your budget stretches to a detached villa in a frontline position, you'll get the panoramic and unobstructed view you want, but in the case of apartment and townhouse developments, only those properties right at the front of the complex are guaranteed a view of the water. In many apartment and townhouse frontline beach developments, the majority of the properties will have at best a partial sea view, and lots will miss out altogether. Another question to ask yourselves is, how close to the water do you want to be? A lot of property hunters in Spain want to be within walking distance of a beach and have a sea view. And while the flatness of most coasts makes it hard to find a good sea view within a short walk of the beach, there are a few locations with land rising just behind the water, and if you know where to look, it can be done. It just reduces the number of options, and the sea view may only be from the first floor. In addition, there are a few very special locations with cliffs at the water's edge, combining panoramic sea views and proximity to beaches. There's even a handful of properties on these cliffs with steps directly into the water. Can't find what you want close to the beach? How about heading inland? A possible option is to move back from the coast, so ask yourselves, how far inland are you prepared to go to get that sea view? Spain is one of the most mountainous countries in Europe, with an average mainland altitude of 650 meters, 2,200 feet above sea level, and within just a few kilometers of the coastline, the Sierras rise steeply. For example, the iconic La Concha Peak that shelters Marbella rises to 1,215 meters, 4,000 feet above sea level, and there are many locations with spectacular sea views along the Mediterranean coasts, but be prepared to be 5 to 10 kilometers. That's 3 to 6 miles inland, and of course a car will be essential. So what can persuade buyers to compromise on the sea view? When and why does it become less important? I think it's due in part to the changed profile of overseas buyers in recent years. These days they tend to be younger, so more likely to have children of school and university ages, more likely to be making a permanent move or plan to in the medium term, more likely to be working, and it's these demographic changes that make the difference. For example, in 2020, I worked for a family with children ranging from early teens to early 20s. The two most important criteria were a good sea view and being walking distance to everything: shops, bars, restaurants, tennis clubs, gym, promenade, beach, the lot. Obviously, the older children were already completely independent, and the younger ones would be soon, and having everything within walking distance was very attractive. Once they saw it would be impossible to get both the sea view and be within walking distance of facilities in their chosen area, the sea view lost out. They bought a house only 200 meters from the beach, but there was no sea view, not even from the chill-out roof terrace. In another case, I was looking for a country estate, and a sea view was a must-have. So I focused the search in an area with spectacular views of Gibraltar and the Moroccan coast. However, after viewing the shortlisted properties, all of which had panoramic sea views, the clients decided that with 2 young children, It would be more practical to be closer to shops and other facilities, preferably walking distance. If that could be achieved, they were prepared to live without the sea view. Again, it was the children's needs that took priority, and after a new search, I found them a property only 700 metres from the nearest village. And if you're lucky enough to get the sea view you've always wanted, don't forget it's vital to ensure the lovely blue view isn't going to disappear in the future. I can't think of anything worse than buying a property with a great sea view, only to have it vanish behind a building a few years later. So make sure you find out what is scheduled to happen on vacant plots of land in the vicinity. Working with the property finders will ensure the due diligence is done for you in advance, so no nasty surprises in the future.